seated, ladies and gentlemen. We would like to introduce our newest member. You want to say something like that? Okay.
Hi, I'm Tia Kenyon. Just hope to do a good job for all of you.
There we go, it's a light up. There we go. Yes.
Our first petition is 948, J.P. McGrath.
9:48, right? Yep. The Halifax Zoning Board of Appeals will hold a public hearing on Monday, August 9th, 2021 at 7 p.m. at the Halifax Town Hall in the Great Hall on the application by John Paul McGrath to appeal the building inspector's denial of a building permit to renovate the structure located at 100 Lake Street, Halifax, Mass. 02338. Said property is owned by Federal National Mortgage Association, care of John Paul McGrath, as shown as Assessor's Map 20, Lot 40, Title Reference Book 55017, page 185. The applicant is seeking to appeal the building inspector's denial of a building permit to renovate a structure at 100 Lake Street, Halifax, as the building permit application was incomplete as it does not meet the requirements of 780 CMR 51, Section R1053, application for permit. The building inspector states, quote, "At this time, in my opinion, I have seen enough evidence concerning both ownerships of 100 and 102 Lake Street that I question the combination and reseparation of both pre-existing non-conforming properties after the enactment of the Town of Halifax zoning bylaws. In my opinion, 100 Lake Street will require zoning relief and/or findings from the Zoning Board of Appeals in conformance with the zoning bylaws, title certification of separate ownership, and relief concerning abandonment," end quote. Area is zoned residential. It is petition number 948.
Mr. McGrath.
Yes. That's not at all,
And more.
except the bank doesn't own it.
We got advice from our council that we cannot grant you the petition because you filed late. You were over the 30 days. You were supposed to file within the 30 days. Now you have an option. You can withdraw without prejudice and come back at a later date. If we vote you down tonight, it will take you 2 years before you do this.
Okay.
So you could withdraw your permit and reapply the permit and get your affairs in order and all that stuff, separate the
What was the
property.
30 days? I don't understand that.
When you filed on July 15th. Wasn't that right?
For the building permit?
Yes.
Okay.
And you were supposed to file within the 30 days.
Oh, there was a miscommunication, that's why I was at the last meeting here.
Right, I mean, right now, we stand that if we vote on it, if we take our council's opinion, the permit would fail.
So I have
You can withdraw without prejudice and come back and file again and do the necessary.
That's what I have to do then, right?
Is that what would you like to do?
I guess that's what I have to do.
But we have to, we need a written piece of paper from you that you want to, withdraw without prejudice. Do you have a piece of paper that you can?
Do you have a form to withdraw? The letter she wrote was as clear as any she's ever written. It's pretty cut and dry with the 30 days.
Yeah, you can write it and sign it, and then we'll take it. That's it. So we can sign the bills. We make a motion to accept his withdrawal?
I'll make a motion to accept the petitioner's withdrawal for petition 948.
Second.
Dan? No, you can't vote on that. Jerry?
Yes.
Peter?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
Myself, yes. Passes 5-0.
Okay.
This binder is spot on. I don't know, you must be up in the middle of the night putting these binders together. I'm like, oh, where's my minutes tab? It's amazing.
We'll do the minutes. Anybody want to check the minutes or?
I don't see any changes. I'll make a motion to accept the minutes of July 12th.
Second.
Jerry?
Yes.
Peter?
Yes.
Yes.
Peter? Myself, yes. Passes 5-0.
I'll make a motion to accept the minutes of July 21st, 2021.
I'll second.
Jerry?
Yes.
Peter?
Yes.
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 Myself, yes.
Chicken, no.
Sorry about that.
7:10. 7:15.
It's a continuation, you don't have to read it.
Okay, sir.
Already.
The road today. True.
I'll make a motion to pay the bills for the Plimpton Halifax Express advertising.
Second?
Jerry?
Yes.
Peter?
Yes.
Yes.
Myself, yes, and Dan? Yes?
The bills?
Tina? For the bills?
I can vote on this?
Yes. Well, it passes 5-0.
I'm not answering.
Okay. Now we go on to Mr. Curtin. Guys, wanna give us a rundown of what you did and what's gonna go on?
So, but just by way of summary, I
Yeah.
should probably start there.
Yeah.
We see that we have a new board member. We're proposing, Tony, Curtin Brothers Oil is proposing to install an oil storage facility at their location at 654 Plymouth Street. By the way, my name is Bob Coluccio with Webb Engineering Associates. So he's proposing to install an oil storage facility. It'll contain number 2 fuel oil and diesel fuel. It will be contained inside of a concrete containment dike for secondary containment purposes. It will have high-level alarms and overfill protection and truck spill protection, and it basically meets all of the state-of-the-art oil storage facility requirements contained in federal and state regulations. It will be, after we go on from here, if we do go through this, it will be approved, thoroughly vetted by the State Fire Marshal's Office. And so that's where we are up to this point. One thing about number 2 fuel oil, just by way of review, number 2 fuel oil has a flash point of 140 degrees, and by comparison, gasoline has a flash point that's minus, I think 70, something like that degrees, which means that gasoline ignites readily at ambient temperature. It doesn't need to be preheated, whereas fuel oil has to be heated before it will even establish ignition. So I think that, having said that, at the last meeting we reviewed a sound study that Webb Engineering did, in which it was determined that at the distance between where the plant's going to be and Plymouth Street, the ambient noise at the street you will not be able to hear the sounds at the oil storage facility. One of the examples that I wanted to highlight, that I'll highlight again, is that when I did the sound level 3 feet from the pump when it was running, I went to a similar facility, and at 3 feet it gave a decibels of between 80 and 85 and low 80 range, let's say. Whereas when I turned on my lawnmower and it took the measurement 3 feet, it was in the low 90s, and then when I turned on the blade, it was in the high 90s. So this pump think of it more like a vacuum cleaner than a gas-powered engine. And so, having established that, I thought it was just good to briefly mention it again. And also, we did a traffic study where it was determined by Van Essen Associates that the relatively few extra trucks that will be on this road does not impact traffic. So some of the items that have come up consistently, we try to address, and Mr. Webby here has a truck turning radiuses showing how trucks will
Yeah,
turn.
could you explain to us the trucks coming in and going out?
Yes, Joe Webby, Webby Engineering, as opposed to Webb Engineering.
Yeah, not related.
Yeah, typically we're designing for a 67-foot trailer. And we'll be coming in, this way, from here, and then back into the truck station, and then we go back out. We were asked to do that by the planning board on the site plan review. I believe that's the only thing we had to do for the site plan review. The other issue, Field Board had asked us to state that out so you can all see what's going to be on the ground.
Percentage of the build out.
And 50%, we had a percentage.
And how many trailers would be going in a day or a week into that facility?
One a day for sure, possibly 2 or 3 days, depending on the temperature.
So the winter months will be the busiest.
Yes.
One of the things to note, and I summarized it in a supplemental letter, which you might have received today, hopefully, and that is that right now, Curtin Brothers Oil drives to Quincy to get oil. And they are driving on Halifax roads. Each trip is 3 miles, and they can have up to 6 trips a day in the winter. And so if you're really considering truck traffic, there's 18 miles of driving that's not involved with delivery that will be eliminated. Not eliminated, let's say cut in a third, because each of these transports has 10,000 gallons, his trucks have 3,000. So if you're eliminating 18 miles of, you only have the traffic from 1 out of 3 of the transports.
No, it's not in a historical district, we established that, right? And any members of the board want to ask questions?
So the sign that they mentioned the last time is on the other side of that property, right?
So again,
The sign, that historical district sign? Yeah, but, so was that placed incorrectly, or the fact that it's, and how did you determine that?
Mr. Shea thought that it was wise to put it there to announce to the traffic that they were entering the historical district. It was originally on the opposite side of the street, and people were walking into it, getting there with the bicycles, so we put it back over here. And now it's going to go back across the street, further up into the Sears property, out of the sidewalk.
You mean across Thompson Street or across?
It's going to be on the north side of Plum Street, directly across from.
So it's basically the same spot, it's just they're moving a sign across the street.
Opposite side of the street.
Was it didn't somebody write a document?
Is it in there? Oh, maybe I just haven't gotten it yet.
So yes, I believe somebody from the Historic Commission made or ruled that our property is not in the historical district.
Alright, thanks, sorry.
Where is the nearest facility like this? Similar or greater or less than this facility?
Okay, so I can do it on here or I can do it up there. I have all of this document has pictures. The nearest one, which I believe is out of service, is Forney Brothers. That's 50,000 gallons, and that's the closest probably.
Thank you, sorry.
But I have in the write-up that I handed the board, I might have went through like 6 facilities showing what the facility looked like, and then what the surrounding neighborhood looked like. And so if I could go through them, there's obviously the Forney Brothers,
Sure.
which is out of service. You have Alvin Haas in East Bridgewater is surrounded by a residential community, and that's I believe that's 50,000 gallons. Then there is Campbell Keith, which is in Brockton, and that's approximately 100,000 gallons. Okay, I'm sorry, it's 88,000 gallons. So
And that's in a residential area?
it's in a highly congested residential area. Horan Oil is in Stoughton, and they have 710,000 gallons. They're located in a highly residential area. Now, as I have all these on. And then another one in Brockton is 40,000 gallons, and that's located in a heavily residential area. Another one in Brockton, same thing. So to be honest with you, as I kept coming up with facilities, I kept coming up with others. I could have come up with 100. They're all residential communities.
How does this facility compare to the one you built in Halifax a while back? Is it going to be more modern, or is it going to be the same idea?
No, I would say that it's similar. The technology hasn't. What has changed is the fuel management, meaning that what happens for building purposes, but ultimately, which is why I like this field of engineering. It's steel bricks, it's concrete is the containment, and a sensor gets triggered by the liquid and gives you an alarm, shuts off your fill pump. That's all still
And you also were speaking about biofuel with this facility. Mr. Curtin was,
Well, the industry is evolving that way, and we're gonna go with it.
you're going
We're gonna
towards
go
that
with it.
way.
But biofuel it actually is a Class 3B liquid, closer to motor oil than it is to fuel oil. So that's not a direction in the, you know,
That's not here
in the
yet.
direction of more hazard. It's a direction away from fire hazard.
Any members of the board want to?
So there was an onsite on Saturday, I wasn't able to make it. Any other members make it?
We all made it.
Any thoughts or comments on it?
It seems like it's set way back and, you know, far away from the street. And with the facility, the way that the trucks were coming in, they're coming in around the building to the facility and coming back out. Nobody's backing out into the street. They're all one continuous motion all the way around. So,
It's very clean.
she was there,
Yeah.
Tina was there, she can speak to you, we're gonna speak to it, go ahead.
Well, and we also discussed how we have Mobile and Davis gas stations, which are much more combustible, just as close to residential
Mhm.
neighborhoods.
Yeah, gasoline is much more of a fire hazard, and it's allowed by special permit at his property. So my personal opinion is, if I had to choose between this and some of the other activities that would be allowed by special permit, this would be the activity I would choose because it's quiet for 8 or 9 months of the year. And then when he's most active is when windows are shut. And so, you know, he could have an auto body there, right, where they're painting and, you know, doing all that kind of stuff. You could have a gas station there. All those things are in the zoning bylaws as special permit. And some of them that are allowed by right without a special permit are probably equally as undesirable, you know, in my opinion. Like what did I have here? Commercial indoor and outdoor amusement, recreation places, place of assembly. I mean, he could have a place of assembly there, you know, that would, and you wouldn't have to come for a special permit.
I think during the walkthrough, I think the closest home is yours to the tank itself. So I mean, as far as the motor is concerned, you would be the first one that would be impacted by it. It seems that way, but I think also when we walking through, I asked about spills, and it seems that there's more spills in a home than there is at a facility like this here.
It's true, having, working with oil dealers, that's where their biggest trouble is mistakes that are made filling at the homes, not at the oil facility.
I mean, there's a lot of checks and, you know,
Well, and ultimately, all of the surfaces that where oil is stored or handled all slope in together. And so the chance of a spill getting out.
So let's say we have a spill in in a tank, and that containment will hold that spill.
Well, it'll hold, it will be designed to hold the contents of the largest tank, which is the 30,000. The tank will never have 30,000 in it because we can only fill it to 90 or 95%, and even then, it's never there. You know, maybe in the summertime, but in the summertime, he's not using it very much, so it sits quiet. And then we have freeboard. What's required by the EPA is a 25-year storm freeboard. However, at our first selectmen's meeting, we went to them first, obviously, because that was, you know, that's where you go before you do any work on a project. You get kind of like a nod to go forward from them. And they asked us to be able to contain 2 25-year storms. That amounts to about 12 inches of freeboard.
Any more questions of the board?
So the comparison keeps coming up with the gas station that's on the other side of the street. The difference here is what? It's the number of gallons is significantly different, right?
Yeah, well, gas station,
Again.
they have different throughputs. Obviously, their busier time, if you can call any time busier than others, is going to be in the summertime because there's more people on the road going on trips. But, you know, they're still Whereas he has a higher volume at his peak. He's also not transferring fuel in increments of 20 gallons, 10 or 20 gallons. His is in one shot, fills that truck up with 3,000 and then shuts it down, till he needs it to fill it again. Whereas, I'm sure that everybody here fuels their tank, and you've got to be very careful not to spill any when you're pulling it out of the nozzle. And the drip always gets out. That won't happen here, because first of all, he doesn't want his concrete, He's his own customer. He's the only person using it. And so if there's a big oil spot underneath, then,
It's not a self-serve station.
That's right, exactly, yeah, that's it, okay, right.
But again, so that the gallons is significantly increased. I'm just talking about the differences between that gas station and what we built.
Well, as far as the storage on site?
Right. So
Okay,
it's like
I don't know
10,000
about
to
that.
50,000?
They vary, gas stations vary, they may be typically, I know a standard Cumberland Farms has I believe maybe one or two 20,000 gallon tanks. It depends on the site, available property, because they want, big tank is gonna store regular gasoline, and then their other tank is gonna be split between diesel fuel and super. So, it's in that range, but other stations are smaller, it just depends on the property and who the marketer is.
And then, for example, like even Cumberland Farms, I think, I don't know, you probably will know better than me, but those are all in-ground tanks, and this is
Those are underground.
Right.
But, I think the conversation here has been consistently about the transport trucks. And if a transport has a spill, my guess is it's going out into the street. Or they have some kind of a catch basin that goes into the ground. There's no good place that a gas station spill goes. And so they just have to be very careful. In this case, the spill is going to go right into the dike.
Any more questions?
No, I think everything's pretty much been answered. You've done a good response, I appreciate it.
I'd like to turn it to the audience. No?
Good evening, my name is Steve Adams. I reside at 22 Cranberry Drive. My understanding is the board, the 6 of you, are here for us to interpret and enforce the town bylaws. According to our town bylaws in section 167.8, an industrial enterprise, including storage, cannot create a nuisance from noise, smoke, or other emissions to adjacent properties. Further, light industrial use shall not be a hazard to public safety or health, nor have a noxious or toxic waste byproduct. You had mentioned high-level alarms, truck spill protection. Clearly, these would not be needed if this was not to prevent a hazard. You also referenced a lot in the last meeting the noise situation. We have an engineer here. My understanding is they are not experts in noise. Last month when I was here, he had mentioned the same thing, that it was equivalent to a 20 horsepower motor, similar to the noise of a lawnmower. What he clearly omitted this time is that lawnmower may be operating between 12 a.m. and 4 a.m. There's a very big difference in noise based on the time of the day. I would not want that noise 4 houses down from where I live at 4 a.m. The other thing I would note here is the trucks. Again, he's been in business for 42 years. It is not reasonable to suggest that after 42 years having done business one way, that we are going to spend a boatload of money, or he is going to spend a boatload of money, to downsize his business and reduce the trucks from 2, which he said last time, to 1. I just did the quick math. He said that his trucks hold 3,000 gallons of fuel. If he's got a 30,000 gallon tank, that would mean he'd be filling 66 houses a day, assuming that average fill up was 150 gallons. I would venture to say that he didn't have the need then to fill up that truck or that truck once a day, as he had just said. The math just doesn't add. In my opinion, you only spend a whole bunch of money if you're looking to outsource, meaning not just for his own personal business, as he stated here, but to sell to other businesses. That's the only reason he's doing this. I think we all know that in the back of our minds, which means the whole traffic study is void, in my opinion. The noise study from an unproven expert is void, in my opinion. And furthermore, and lastly, what I'll end with, our town bylaws should protect the residents from exactly this storage facility that's going to create a noxious and toxic environment, including noise. So please, do your job, take our town bylaws to heart, and enforce them here. Thank you very much.
Would you like, state your name, please?
Karen Faber, 66 Clyde, Bosworth. I would state the same thing, that, you know, the board is put on to follow our bylaws, and we need everyone to follow them. I don't even know why we're here. It's in the bylaws to protect us. We're the ones that are sitting there. If my neighbor, 3 or 4 doors down from me, starts mowing their lawn at 4 o'clock in the morning, there's gonna be a problem, okay? That's not okay. And we can just take one person's word that that's what the noise level is. I don't buy it. I don't buy the fact that this is being done so that he saves time going to Quincy, but he's been doing it on a regular basis for years. He is building a bulk plant so that he can sell it at retirement or outsource all of these trucks to come, because once you approve it, there's nothing in there that says only 1 or 2 trucks can come. Now, as it is right now, getting out of Clyde Bosworth Road, okay, if someone is filling up at the Davis gas station, we can't get out because they back the trucks in.
But these trucks aren't backing in, they're driving in and go. No, that's what they showed on the map, ma'am.
On the map originally for Stephanie Davis gas station.
We're not talking about Davis gas station. We're talking about Mr. Curtin. He's gonna be pulling in and pulling out.
What I'm understanding is who's going to go and validate that? Do we have to take pictures every time we see a truck backing up and it's installing our traffic and we can't get out?
Can I, hold on, can I interrupt you for a second?
Yeah.
When people come into Cumberland Farms, the trucks have to come in one way and go out one way.
Right.
And that's the way it was put from the beginning. They come in one way and they go out one way. And that's what's gonna happen with Mr. Curtin. He's gonna come in from the right side and go all the way out to the left side. He's not gonna back up onto the street.
Okay, so.
But Davis, no, he's gonna go into his property and come out. Davis's gas station is totally different animal.
They still have to cross 106.
They're gonna have to cross 106 no matter what. If you're gonna pull into his yard, you're gonna cross 106.
Okay, but I'm asking.
Either direction, wherever you wanna go.
There's
You
an
wanna,
accident
hold on
that-
a second. Mr. Weber, you wanna show us you wanna show her what's going on?
The entrance plan, this is Tony's house now, and this is the barn garage.
So it's the opposite way. We gotta move it this way, right?
I'll hold it any way you like.
That's the garage.
That's the
That's
garage.
the house.
Truck's gonna come in this way, back up into the fueling station, and then come right back out.
Okay, so they're gonna not go to the right on one side, we're gonna cross traffic across 106 and get the opposite way.
This way, this is a turning radius point. This is the sharpest radius to go this way.
That's exactly right.
Right, so this way is what we're showing the board. This is the worst case scenario.
Right, and I'm telling you that this here is gonna cause disruption to 106 in our traffic. It's also the noise, it's also the safety issues, the health concerns that we have, and our bylaws here state that you need to do your job and you need to deny this.
Well, we have 2 gas stations within,
They were here beforehand.
and he was here before that too.
No, he doesn't have a permit for this. This is coming in as a special permit. He does not have a permit, and these bylaws need to be followed.
Can specifically to your points, I think you make some very good points. I think, and the bylaw you're talking about is 167.7, 167.8. That, I think, the two issues we have here is it appropriate to issue a special permit on this lot? That's the concern that I have, that they've been addressing from the second they sat there, very, very intelligently, I think. And the second is what the definition of light industrial use is, right? So our job is to hear everybody, like you keep mentioning, our job is to hear everybody in the room. And it's a pretty, so what I'm reading here too is and what I'm listening to you say is a pretty good argument as to what you think light industrial use is, right? But and what they've said here and what they've written here is also a pretty good argument as to, and he went step by step in here about what noise there would be and vibration there would be and smoke there would be and glare there would be, radiation there would be, noxious byproducts there would be. Now what I'm trying to do right here is, I'm trying to put myself in your position if I lived in that neighborhood and how it would affect me. I'm also trying to think of, like it also sounds to me, your point of his business is one thing. That's not really what we make our decisions on. That's not our job, is to decide what his business is going to be, because I don't want to limit business in town. But I can also say it sounds like he's been driving to Quincy and back at 5 in the morning, and that's got to suck. So I'm sure that part of the reason he wants to do this is to stop doing that.
But he doesn't have to go to Quincy. There's plenty of other places he can go to.
Yeah, I have no
I'm
idea.
saying,
Right.
he can say he's going to
Right.
Quincy, and that's the
But
issue.
to specifically to your point, that has nothing to do with, I have to make the decision on what, and they all do, which might be different than mine.
So who's going to police how many trucks do it?
And so very frank to your answer is the zoning enforcement agent, who gets vilified in this town every time they go and tell somebody they can't do something. So, and then they get fired. So very, very clear to your point is we've had 3 meetings now where that specific person has been torn apart for that specific reason. He's going to town trying to enforce the zoning laws. So, but for me on this petition, I don't know how anybody else feels, but I do, like, I don't want you to think I don't hear you. Like I might agree with your definition of what light industrial use is, and then I don't think we should issue it because it's not appropriate for the business district. And Mr. Greeley has mentioned our last meeting that he didn't do that in the business district because he doesn't think it's a light industrial use. But they have, with kind of background and evidence that they've brought, think that isn't a light industrial use. And I think that's what this turns on. And it's not, depending on who you talk to, it's not as clear cut. It's difficult.
But the town people are the ones that,
Yeah.
there's a side on the bylaws.
Yeah.
We, the town people.
Okay, may I want to say something before we go any further? Hold on a second. Go ahead. State what you want to say.
Steve Adams, 22 Cranberry, and I appreciate what you said. I would say that we have passion because we're concerned here, right? So forgive the passion for maybe the tone. But you had mentioned I can't say the word, but you get it, right? This is not as clear cut as we would all hope it to be, which is why your decision here is hard. We get that. But you kind of also have to err on the side of caution when you're talking about scores of families versus one business. And again, I understand what you said. You can't predict the future, right? You know what he's telling you today. You don't know what is going to happen in the future. But I think we can all make that leap of faith and assume something is going to happen in the future. We can either assume that another generation of his family business is going to take over and change the business model. We can assume, based on the fact that he's been in business for 42 years, that potentially the business will be sold. And when Karen said, which is true, that once we decide this, that's it. There are no takebacks here. Once it's built, and there's nothing we can do. So I would hope that you would take that into mind as well, and I'm sure you will. And again, thank you for the opportunity.
Can you state your name?
Yes, sir. Justin Silva, 50 Plano Washington Road. I'm not Texan, don't do good public speaking, so I'm going to refer to my notes here. I believe our zoning laws prohibit this type of development. For anyone who's, maybe at home not fully informed about this, we are talking about a bulk hazmat plant operating nearly 24 hours a day adjacent to a historical district, close proximity to a cranberry bog, multiple neighborhoods, people sleeping. If our zoning laws don't prohibit this type of project in this community, I would just ask, what specifically do they prohibit? A member of the Board of Selectmen and a member of the Planning Board last winter expressed support for this special permit. You can refer to the minutes of those meetings. this spring. I think the people in this town have spoken pretty clearly about corruption. We've spoken clearly too about the character and culture of this town and what we want it to look like. I don't want an auto parts store where a farm used to be. That's not part of the character and community of what we want here. That's not why we live here. If I wanted to walk out of my house and see a bulk oil plant and smell diesel fuel, I'd move to Brockton. Brockton's an industrial center. They have factories there for 200 years. We have farms. We have homes and families. It's a different community. And I think when referring to our bylaws, you have to also understand the intent in which they were written. The bylaws in Brockton were written with a different intent than the bylaws in Halifax. Those bylaws in Brockton are designed to protect the character and culture of the city of Brockton, of which I'm very close to. Our bylaws are written for the same reason, to protect the character of Halifax. And when I think of Halifax, I think of farmland, I think of our downtown area, our historical district. I do not think of bulk hazmat plants. That's not part of our community. That's why we have these bylaws in place. So when we're looking at that, we think light industrial. That's exactly what we're talking about. Light industrial that fits the character of this community. Plymouth has a bulk oil plant. I visited the site myself. I believe it's Churchill. It's on Camelot Drive. It's in an industrial complex where things that are industrial belong. And it's over 1,300 feet from the nearest house, which is across the other side of the river. So I implore the board tonight to deny Mr. Curtin this special permit on the grounds that it violates our laws because it is not compatible with the character of this community. Thank you.
Miss?
Jennifer Green from 61 Cranberry Drive. I just wanted to follow up with what Mr. Adams said, Mrs. Sprout said, and this gentleman here. I agree with what they said, but I want to follow up with, I believe it's Mr. Webb said. A couple things that I was listening to that you said. A traffic study was done. I'm wondering when this traffic study was done. There were no road strips put down. Usually when a traffic study is done, it measures the traffic, how many cars are going across, how many trucks are going across. I never saw any evidence of a traffic study. I find that very disconcerting. Following up on something else that he said, and this was his words, the plant. He described this property as now becoming a plant. That's not what is being presented here. We're talking about Mr. Curtin having one oil truck to fill up on his property, not a plant. If it's a plant, that's talking several oil trucks, approximately maybe in the 10s, 20s, 30s. And if those are coming through, that's a lot different than Mr. Curtin filling up his own oil truck. In addition, he also said, when asked how many trailers by the board a day, and he said at least one per day. Is it one per day? How many are coming? Is Mr. Curtin selling his property? Is he developing a partnership? What's going on? It's very concerning that there's now an 8-truck garage, 4 inside, 2 on each side on the overhangs, but you're going to have 1 truck. That makes no sense whatsoever, following up on what Mr. Adams said. I wouldn't build a house to house 30 people and live there by myself. It doesn't make sense. I'm concerned about the turning radius of the trucks pulling into Mr. Curtin's property, not necessarily going around the property, but their ability to turn in off of 106 and make that 90-degree turn. And that brings me to the fact, what would stop these trucks from coming around Cranberry Drive and looping through whenever they feel like it and going straight across the pull into Mr. Curtin's fuel plant, station, whatever it happens to be.
Excuse me, ma'am. Those trucks aren't gonna go in a residential neighborhood to cut through, to pull into Mr. Curtin's,
What's to stop them? Is there a bylaw that stops them from coming through?
You can put restrictions on them to only stay on 106 and enter the property through 106.
Okay, can these trucks take a 90-degree turn off of 106 into Mr. Curtin's property?
Of course they can.
I'd like to see it. And again, additionally, just following up on exactly what they said, a plant. In his own words, he described this property as a plant.
Well,
It does not sound like a small business anymore, and a small business does not have a facility, a building, a brand new building that houses 4 trucks inside and 4 more trucks under the overhangs outside.
Mr. Greeley.
Hi, Mr. Greeley. My trucks will load during the day, all right? My other trucks load during the day, and on occasion, I'll have a delivery of a tanker come in during the day. 90%, and not 90, but 80% of the time, they like to come in after the traffic at night, between 8 and midnight, or first thing in the morning before the traffic. All right? 4:30, 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock in the morning. That's when most of my trailers come in. Now, a couple of things. I'd like to bring up sound. Mr. Coluccio is a very, very good engineer. He's done my work. But I'll tell you, I have to totally disagree with him, and I think you people ought to come down and watch my bulk plant being loaded by a tanker. You can't talk next to that pump. It screams. You can really, really hear it. And you've also got
Mr. Greeley, not to interrupt you, you can't talk when a lawnmower's running. If a lawnmower's running, you can't talk next to it. Come on. How many trucks do you have, Mr. Greeley?
I have 4 trucks.
Okay, you have 4 trucks. How many trailers do you have coming in a day?
Usually 1, sometimes 2 a day.
Okay, your business is similar to his?
I don't know. but
If
I
it's
have
if
4
it's
trucks
similar,
and he has 4 trucks.
then you're getting the same thing as he is.
Right, but I'm not next to a home. The nearest home next to me is a quarter of a mile away. I haven't finished talking, I'd like to finish talking. Okay? What
But
happens?
Mr. Greeley, were you in a residential area at one time?
I certainly was. and I
Okay,
moved
then.
out
Mr.
right
Greeley,
here.
Mr. Kern, are we in the Mr. Greeley?
Guys, we get
No, please. We're talking to Mr. Greeley. When it's your turn to talk, let him talk.
Finish.
Go ahead,
And
Mr.
then you
Greeley.
can ask any questions you want, but I would like to finish my train of thought. As I said, most of those trailers come in between 8 and midnight, or 3, 4 o'clock in the morning. The sound level is a lot more than a lawnmower. You should come down, you shouldn't turn around and make a decision without hearing my tanking, which is exactly the same unit that Mr. Kirk is having. You should hear mine scream. Now, the other thing is, you've got a 600 horsepower Kenworth parked right there at 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning. You think those guys gonna shut that truck off at 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning? Those trucks are noisy. And when he pulls in at 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, he's releasing his maxi cans, and you hear this big shh. Okay? And you tell me that the next door neighbor can stay asleep while that happens, you're not being honest with yourself. That is extremely noisy. And the only way you're going to find out is come down to my plant and listen to my noise, because it is noisy. The other thing is, I'd like to know, I understand that John Shea wrote a letter from the Historic Commission. I'd like to know exactly if that happened. Now, you have some questions for me? The other thing, one other point I'd like to bring. During the day, as I said, I've got 4 trucks on EP at one time, and 4 trucks too. The problem is, guys don't like to come during the day because one of my trucks might be loaded, okay? So he's under the rack. Another truck will come in behind him, so he parks 40 feet behind that truck so that guy can get out and he can drive in. Then you got this stupid trailer truck comes in that's 70 feet long, so you've got another truck under the rack, another truck waiting, and then you got a 70-foot long tractor. Okay? That's something you're not thinking about in that stupid traffic plan. All right? You are going to have a traffic jam.
Mr.
And
Daly.
it is noise.
I just, Bert King, Pemmican Way in Halifax. Just like to ask the members of the board, there's an awful lot of speculation about what the business is going to grow into, what's going to happen, what could turn into, what could happen. Is there, or actually I know there is, but would you review the stipulations that you have in place, that if there was a substantial change to what was applied to the board, that there are penalties, daily penalties, and their permit could be revoked. So it's not like, as been determined here, you know, that once it goes in, that's it, you're all over and done with. If they don't meet the requirements, the restrictions and the stipulations, or if there is a quote-unquote a substantial change as listed in our bylaw, that there is recourse from the board. And again, through the chairman to Mr. Curtin, is that the pump that they're referring to, is that electric? Is that the one that's making all the noise? Is it an electric pump?
Are they all electric, sir? Yeah, they're all electric.
They're all electric. Thank you.
May I? Go ahead. Oh, no. Go ahead.
Mr. Greeley, where is your plant located?
In an industrial park where it belongs.
What is I'm just asking, I'm not familiar with that, so I was just asking the address.
End of the town, there's an industrial park here. There's one on the right, and then my property's on the left next to the storage facility. I have storage permits at my home at 847 Plymouth Street. I would never think about putting a tank there next to two residences.
So you're a little bit further down the facility, it's not...
Right at the end of the town line.
Oh, thank you.
All right?
Mr. Chairman,
Right.
first off, if we're talking about words like corruption, you're looking at the wrong board. Okay? I take exception to that. We are losing excellent people in this town, and it has to stop. And everybody needs to educate themselves and find out for yourself. I'm not going to tell you what to think, but find out what's going on in this town. Don't look at this board and say corruption. And we've lost tremendous people, and we're all going to pay a price for it, number one. That being said, I deal with traffic all day long. I was out there today, 8 hours dealing with trucks, low boys, all that. Everybody knows, I'll say it 100 times. When it's 50-50, I'm always for the homeowner, because the homeowner has nowhere to go. You pay 30 years mortgage, you're paying taxes, you're paying maintenance. I'm a real estate agent. There's a bundle of rights that go with purchasing a property. And one of those bundle of rights is quiet enjoyment of your property. I'm very sensitive to that. And at the last meeting, I drilled them hard. I went to the site inspection, and if it helps you, a lot of my fears were alleviated, okay? I felt good about certain things. The number one issue for me going forward, the spills and stuff don't concern me that much. It's contained. I was a toolmaker for many years. All I can do is tell you what I know, okay? I've made all these types of fittings. You know, to tell me there's not going to be a spill someday, human error is going to cause the spill, not the type of flange and all that. I've made all these. I wasn't going to get into that argument. So you may have it, but it's contained. That and the turning radiuses, I specifically asked for that. Yes, very easily a truck can make a 90-degree turn onto the property. I was standing there. Yes, very easily a truck can pull in forward and pull out forward, just like they do everywhere else. It won't be a duplicate of the problems that we have with the gas stations that are kind of sticking out in the road. We're not going to have that with this. So that fear was alleviated. Pictures don't tell the tale. You got to go stand there and look. All right. So I stood there and I looked at how far the houses were away. I looked at who the neighbors were. The one major concern I have is operating hours, because there are going to be trucks that show up and they are going to idle. So that's a major concern. Is it going to affect 2 or 3 houses down? No, it's not. Okay?
I didn't know that.
Because of experience. That's how I know it. Okay?
But this isn't a conversation. You have to be recognized to be able to speak.
What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to explain to you my experience and how I look out for the homeowners. And I think genuinely I drilled them hard and I wanted questions answered. Okay? So to combine all this and try to come to a point, Mr. Gaynor kind of touched base on it. We can put conditions on a special permit, like operating hours. Like we could maybe do nothing from midnight till 4 in the morning. limit the number of trucks, only his own trucks. So things can be put on that to kind of come to a consensus here. But the spills, the turning radiuses, just to let you know, because I'm always for the homeowners, I was satisfied with those.
Can I just, the tone of this meeting is I understand, I would feel as passionately about this if I lived close to this as everybody lives close to this in this room. But like from my perspective, I see two business owners who have operated in a town that doesn't have a ton of business in it that I really respect. And I see a lot of passionate people who care a lot about this town, but what I haven't seen is anybody trying to do anything nefarious. He is looking to do something for his business based on the definition of the bylaws that we have, and the residents have a totally different definition of whether it's appropriate for that, for a special permit in this town based on the bylaws, and they've read it, which I'm impressed by, because nobody in the last 10 years has read the bylaws in this town. And the second piece is whether or not it qualifies as light industrial use. And to be honest, for me, and I think based on the bylaws, those are the only two things that matter. And it's whether or not this is light industrial use, and whether or not this is appropriate for that specific lot, and whether or not there are conditions that can be met, like Dan has brought up, that can create a situation where that can exist on that lot based on the bylaws that we have. And I'm like, there are pretty thoughtful arguments on both sides. So I want everyone to know, I am kind of devastated in the last 6 months. The tone of all of our neighbors talking to each other has turned so interruptive and negative, because I've really liked working in this town and living in this town. I like everybody I've interacted with, and I don't think there's anybody on this petition who is doing something terrible. And I just want us to share our passionate feelings about this without thinking everybody's a liar and a cheat. I've never seen corruption in this town in the last 2 months of secret meetings. So I just want everybody to get along. And I don't think that's unreasonable. Please.
Mrs. Fagan.
Karen Cleveland, 66 County Road. I apologize. I am passionate about this. It is close to my home. It's probably not close to yours, okay? So there's a reason for our passion. But I also done my homework, all right? I went and spoke to Mr. Shea. Okay, because the sign, as I showed you, I sent pictures to the board, the sign was there, okay? So we have to think that that's where it is. It shows the house right across the street is in the National Historic District, right? But yet his property isn't, but the sign's there, okay? So I did my homework, and I stopped down the barber shop, and I spoke to John. And I'll be honest with you, John said it's not. The two houses on the corner are eliminated from the historic district. All the other houses, including the Steels, all the way down to the golf course, those are all in the historical district.
In this town, we have spot historical. There's some historic here, some the other side of town. It's not continuous.
Right, but I'm saying
and that's why,
because I did my homework, right? And I respect his decision. He told me this is what it is. Okay, that's what it is. And then he told me that they were going to move the sign. So that's all accurate information that I did my homework on. Okay? But what people aren't thinking of is I was on the finance committee for years. Okay? Is how much money that the town people paid to clean up the lakes. Okay? If there's a spill, okay, who's going to pay to clean it up? We don't have the manpower in town or the materials for a disaster there, okay? We don't have that. Those are all things that we have to take into consideration.
we are taking them into consideration. We've asked Mr. Greeley, he's been in operation probably for 15 years, 20 years. Have you had a spill yet?
38.
30 years, have you had a spill?
No.
In that facility? It's a safe, they're telling us it's a safe facility. We have to take their word for it. We're not the engineers. We're here to discuss the petition, to go by what they're telling us, and go from there. And we're gonna try to do everything that we can for the town of Halifax.
I understand that, but the property that's abutting this property,
Mhm.
okay, is owned by the
Town,
South Shore Housing.
Council on Housing.
Halifax Housing, and it's got a deed restriction on that property, okay, for senior housing on that, or.
How many
senior
times did
center.
that come in front of the town for?
I'm just saying, if
just-
that happens,
it's-
how are we gonna get the elderly people out of there? It's
Believe me,
one
but-
half mile has to be evacuated if there's a problem.
You know, we're thinking about that too, so.
So that's just, my point of view is that there's
Mr.
a lot
Greeley.
more to it, and the noise is huge and the smell is big.
Mr. Greeley.
Yeah, one thing I'd like to bring up. Now, I was loaded at Citgo, actually, I've been in the business for 50 years, that's how old I am.
Uh-huh.
But only 38 for myself. When you're loading, most people load in the entry, the Citgo's. When you pull in there, usually you're in and out of there in an hour. But I have seen times when they have electrical problems, or when they have a lot of traffic. I've been in there 4 hours. Now, if you order a truck, and he gets stuck up there, now he's supposed to bring that load in at 8 o'clock or 10 o'clock, something like that, or after 4 o'clock in the morning. He's got a full tank. He is not going to turn around and say, I can't bring it to you, because he's got another order right behind it. It might be gasoline. So that truck is coming. So you can't turn around and say, you can't go between 8 and 6 in the morning, because that truck has to move off. It's a major problem. All right? That load comes in when it comes in. You can't tell them when not to come in. And you people are doing an injustice by not coming down to my plant and finding out how loud these things are. It is not alarming.
Those
horsepower.
Those conditions are kind of like, you might have one here, one there.
No, it's a regular occurrence. You never know how long it's going to take for you to get out of Citgo. It could be an hour, it could be 2 hours. I've seen trucks wait there 6 hours.
What does it take to unload the tanker in your place?
By the time you finish, a half an hour.
Half an hour.
But that doesn't mean that he's not going to sit there for another 20 minutes with that 600 horsepower pinwheel still chugging along, doing his paperwork. There's a certain amount of paperwork involved in the delivery process. So he could be there 45 minutes, he could be there an hour, and that truck is running. But you should not turn around and shortchange these people by not coming out to find out how noisy my tank is. And it's the exact same unit he's got.
Is that a 20 horsepower pump?
It is the same exact.
Just-
Mr. Paluccio designed my system, and it looks like the same system.
Okay, Mr. Greeley. Mr. Webb.
Well, just a couple of comments. One is that the pump will be recessed approximately 4 feet below grade. So when if you do take up the offer and go to that facility, you have to stand, in order to know the impact, don't stand at the pump. You have to stand 170 feet away, because that's where the receptors of any sound would be. So and I want to just correct the fact that the lawnmower is louder than the pump. And there's, when I called the manufacturer and I asked them what was the decibels of their pump, that was where I first started, they told me 80 decibels. I wrote that down. I went and I did my own. I bought it. I didn't use an app on a cell phone or any of that. I actually have a sound meter, that's rated for this type of work. And I stood 3 feet away from the pump. I did not get 80. I did get higher. I got 85. But as I moved away, and I believe in my sound level, I give you the distances to where the point where I would get to the receptors. And at the point where I was, where anybody might hear this, you couldn't hear the pump anymore. You might have heard a slight whir if there wasn't any traffic. And 106 is loud. I did some readings there at which it was louder than Route 9 in New Hampshire, where I did my original sound level study. We actually walked up Cranberry Road and did some readings, and with the cars coming by, it was in the 60s range, which is about the same, but from that distance, the same as on that aisle. I also would want to say that, hold on a second. Are there, if you do choose to regulate hours, are any of his direct abutters here showing any concern?
They were last time.
Excuse me, what's your name?
Janet Reese, on Cranberry Drive. One of his direct abutters is Gordon Andrews, the father, so he cannot be here to rebut any of this because he had to excuse himself.
If you want a second, Mr. Webby, what is the distance from the plant to the center of 106?
From there to the center, that was there.
I have just one question. I was curious. I want to clear something up. Everyone is talking, you're going to have one truck on the road. I thought you had 2 or 3. You have 4 trucks. So we're not talking one truck. We're talking 3 or 4 that you're going to be using. Because a few people kept on saying you only have 1 truck and you're going to push your business.
Which is already
3 or 4 that you use all the time. I just want to clear that up.
He's already using them, and those are the trucks that, when I said earlier that there's 18 miles of travel.
180?
To the center.
So the distance from
The
the,
center, from the front of the
So it's 200 to the inside.
205.
I actually, my 170 was the abutter on the right side. However, he still has that garage between him and these trucks. Now you can, where I wanted to go earlier, and I didn't get to. I probably asked a question that got me off. Was that if you're considering that you can stipulate that they turn their engines off. It's going to be a nuisance to him as well. I lived where I grew up. We had my father was running out all the time, yelling at the meat packers who were parking their trucks under our window. Because they had to keep the engine running to keep the meat frozen.
right.
But they don't have to keep it running here. So.
Well, at the time, that's going to be difficult. They'll have to wait. That's how they get this heat and stuff. I mean,
So the distance is.
Well, but it is quick.
It is a
Mr.
concern.
Reed
It
is
is a
correct.
concern.
We're talking, the flow rates are such that the from start to finish, it's 20 minutes.
to unload the truck,
Yeah,
10,000 gallons.
yeah.
But it's a legitimate concern. That's why
Absolutely.
That's why I'm thinking hours of operations that Mr. Kirk can live with. That would help allay some of the fears, and some of the concerns.
Yeah.
Steve Adams, 22 Cranberry. I just want to point out that this gentleman is not a noise expert, as I had mentioned before. Sometimes it's the things people don't bring up that are most important. He mentioned walking up and down Route 106 and Cranberry Drive. I would argue that it was probably not at 12 a.m. or 4 a.m. Again, a very big underscoring as much as I can difference there. In addition, we have another wonderful business owner who will now get my oil business, thank you. It's important that you are able to take his word for one piece, but when he talks about the noise, we have to also appreciate his opinion over a non-expert. This guy lives the life of the noise. And again, he had the peace of mind and the respect of his neighbors to not put this right next door to residential properties. And again, the bylaws are all we should really be talking about here. The bylaws say noise. It doesn't say how much noise, it just says noise. We know that this is going to be loud because I believe with conviction what Mr. Greeley said. He couldn't have been more clear. It's loud. He said it screams. Guess what?
Okay.
I believe that and I hope you do too.
We've already gone over that, sir.
I
and,
appreciate you, Mr. Nezarella. I really, truly do. But this is my moment, okay? I don't do this all the time. I only do this when it really matters to me and my family, so I hope you appreciate where I'm coming from.
We do.
When I say that the bylaws should protect us, I know that you know that that's true. And again, I loved what you said. If ever there's an ounce of 49.5 to 50, that you always go with the neighborhood. I think that's where we are. There are too many issues here. too many of our bylaws that this is impacting. And I hope that at some point you can kind of ignore some of the tone and just go with what you know is true in our town bylaws.
All right, so we're talking about maybe once, maybe in the busy season, twice a day, 20 minutes for the pump. So in my mind, if I was living there, I wouldn't be worried about the pump. I would be worried about the trucks idling there, as Mr. Gurley said. I think that's I mean, 20 minutes twice a day in the busy season when your windows are closed, I don't think, again, looking out for the residents, I don't think is unreasonable. Okay, there's a lot, you know, you could have a neighbor, you could have a loud neighbor blaring his radio all day, that's much worse. I'm just trying to be reasonable here. And I've studied the plant, I've studied the turn radiuses, all my other fears, I think, have been answered, okay, and concerns have been answered.
Can those trucks pump when the when the truck is shut off?
Yeah, well, yes, what you know, your trucks that sometimes have pumps on them, which is when there's not a pump at the facility. However, we're gonna have a pump at the facility.
So the truck could be shut off?
So the truck can shut off, yeah.
Could be shut off?
Right, all you're doing is opening the, all he has to do is open the belly valve, and that's done by the connection.
Right.
I just wanted to mention that it didn't get brought up, maybe it's submitted too late. I did submit a petition on behalf of residents of Cranberry Drive against this. But what I really wanted to go back to was the traffic study and the amount of trucks. Mr. Clinton's now saying he has 4 trucks. I was told at the last meeting he said he was going down to 1. So it's not going to be 2 trucks filling up during the winter hours. It sounds like it's going to be more. I'm also concerned, maybe not so much about the tanks he's putting in leaking, but Mr. Greeley does not have a paved lot right now. It's a gravel lot. If any of these trucks have any kind of leak, whatever's leaking is going right into the ground. I'm surprised right now that that's even allowed for him to have a gravel lot. And I just want to go back to the traffic study. I think we all have a right to see this traffic study where these trucks are not going to make a difference filling up. I don't know how many trucks Mr. Greeley can Mr. Curtin can have on his lot at one time. But if anybody tries to get out of Cranberry Drive at any kind of rush hour in the morning, say between 6 and 9, or getting back onto Cranberry Drive between 4 and 7, it's very hot. And as anybody can testify who lives in this town, there have been several accidents at that junction of 105 Cranberry Drive and 106. I can recall 3 of them quite vividly. One spun into Mr. Curtin's yard, ended up in Gordon Andrews' yard, ended up back in Mr. Curtin's yard, and it was a complete mess. So I think that this traffic study that supposedly happened, I think we all need that data and to need where the data comes from that these trucks will make a difference. And not knowing if it's 1 truck, 2 trucks, 4 trucks, or if it will be a plant that will be fueling other trucks. Thank you.
Thank you.
I know there was a traffic study as well for the planning board when they were trying to put the cannabis property down on Plymouth Street, so that could probably work. I mean, I'm sure you have one, but that could be looked at as a backup as well. It's kind of
well, they actually used the data that was done for those previous studies. What he did was he did a speed study to verify, first of all, determine whether a truck would create any backups or any potential hazards, and he gets technical into that part of it. I'm not a traffic studies expert, so I can only, we had somebody else do it.
Mr. Chairman?
Excuse me.
I have a question. How many, I mean, I know we're talking a lot of trucks. How many trucks are gonna come out of that site on a daily basis? How many trips? How many trips will be leaving your facility on a daily basis? You've got 3 to 4 trucks. How many times will they be coming in and out?
Operating 2 now. They can go in and out 4 to 6 times a day.
4 to 6 times a day.
That's happening now, though.
Per truck.
Per truck.
Yeah, the traffic assessment says that it's gonna generate approximately 2 to 3 total truck trips per day and a total of 2 to 5 additional during the winter months, with 1 transport truck during the day. That's them
That's
breaking
what
it down.
that's basically what he just said.
I mean, I'm just trying to get a feel, I know you're saying that there's gonna be a lot of trucks coming in and out, and I'm trying to get a feel of how many trucks are actually gonna be coming in and out.
There's more coming out of the gas station.
Well, that's what I mean, but I mean, we're not talking daily trips every 10 minutes coming out of there. It's not as bad as you're saying. I'm just trying to, we have to kind of judge. I know what you're saying about the traffic and trucks coming in and out, but I have to also come up with how many trucks are gonna be coming out of there? How many times a day? And it's not gonna be happening all at once, it's gonna be spread out.
Hold on a second, miss.
The important thing to note though is that that's what we're discussing now is what his trucks do. That's not going to change as far as he's still going to have the same number of customers, right? So that's not what's changing. What's changing is the transport truck coming in. But right now he's taking those trucks to Quincy. Those trips will be eliminated. Now, whether he goes and doesn't come back to the plant, to the property that day or with that particular trip, those all depend upon, everything else that's just going on in the business. But for the most part, 1 truck will come in, is going to replace the need for 3 trucks to go somewhere. It's just, that's the formula. Transport truck has 10,000 gallons in and household truck has 3,000. And so at worst, it's going to be probably a net no change.
Yes, ma'am.
Jennifer, 26 Prairie Drive. A question that hasn't been answered here is Mr. Burton going to have other companies come and get fuel at this site? That question has been overlooked, and I think that's a very important question to all of us.
Nobody.
We're all talking about 4 trucks, and there's no stipulation that he can't sell to other companies, and I think that's a big question we all have. Is this solely for Mr. Curtin's use and his trucks? Which could turn out to be 8 trucks given
We'll get
the
that
facilities.
answer for you right now. Mr. Curtin, is anybody gonna come in and load other than your trucks? Okay.
Doesn't work. There's no money in it.
And we can put that as a stipulation. in the
We
special permit.
have to put that in the stipulation, that the hours of operation, no trucks coming in other than the people that are gonna deliver the fuel to you, and
And my own person,
your trucks are the only ones that are gonna be delivering the fuel to the homeowners. Yes, Mr. Greeley.
Bring up one point that seems to be overlooked. I think Mr. Curtin's, all his trucks, except for maybe one, are 6-wheel trucks. In the state of Massachusetts, you're not allowed to put more than approximately 2,565 gallons in a truck without being overloaded. So if he's putting 3,000 gallons in a truck, he's coming out of that yard overloaded by 300 gallons.
Mr. Greeley, let me stop you right there. Let's ask Mr. Curtin, how many gallons you put in your trucks?
full to the cap, if I stuffed it in the full, 2,900 gallons. I was visited by the DOT, it's 2,700, all my manifests say 2,700 gallons. That's what I've been instructed by Massachusetts DOT.
I mentioned 3,000 is a nominal number. Not
3,000 is the tank size,
It-
but what it holds is 2,700.
Yes.
That's gasoline. It's 2,600, 2,650, depending on the chassis, maximum. So they're gonna be loaded 4 times.
Duly noted.
All right? Fuel oil is heavy
Okay.
gasoline.
Mrs. Faber.
I just have one question, and that is, if this property was sold, right, do those restrictions go to that person that's purchasing the property, that they can only have
If-
4 trucks in a
If
day?
it's gonna be sold as a diesel fuel plant, it would have to, restrictions will have to stay.
Right, but what would the restriction be if you decided to sell it as a bulk plant?
Well, whatever we would put in as stipulations. would stick with
Stipulations will
that.
have to hold.
Yeah. The conditions would be there, and then it would be
That would be
zoning.
very important to the
Yeah, then it'd be
town.
300 bucks a day, like if it's a violation.
Alrighty. Lisa, will you vote on it?
This time it's just a question. I'm very confused now. He said he had 2 trucks and would likely go down to 1. We'd also have, I'm guessing, another bigger tanker truck to fill this 30,000
No,
gallon tank,
no,
right?
No, he says there's one truck is gonna be maybe one trailer coming in, or 2 trailers coming in a week.
So I guess my question here is as clear and simple as I can make it. On an average 24-hour day, right, how many trucks are we talking here? Whether your own or other, how many trucks total?
Not more than 2.
Not more than 2.
Which means you're filling, call it 6,000 gallons of fuel a day. Is
What's that?
accurate?
He's doing that now.
Right, but I think that's an important difference though, because all the noise isn't in Halifax. He's going to, he said Quincy, and those trucks, you know, are
Excuse
no
me.
longer Halifax's problem. with that.
Excuse me, sir. He's got 4 operating trucks right now. Okay, if he's using 2, if he's doing 3 trips for each truck, that's 6 trips.
Where is he getting his fuel now?
He's getting it out of Quincy. Wherever he's getting it out,
Right.
we don't.
So again, I don't care about the noise, quite honestly, further up on Route 106 if he's driving back and forth. I only care about the noise associated with his facility.
Okay,
Which is 4 houses down.
we're gonna put stipulations in. When the truck comes in, the truck is gonna have to be shut down. And they're gonna pump the fuel into the tanks with electric motors. I mean, the distance is 180 feet, plus those motors are depressed 4 feet into the ground.
Sure. So a couple of things here, right? And forgive my passion. It seems to me, having attended several of these meetings, both in person and on Zoom prior to in person, the story keeps changing how many trucks. Last time, and I have it written down, verbatim from what he said, was he was going from 2 trucks a day to 1. Well, that was only a month ago, and today, it is a little bit different from that. And it's a little bit different from the Zoom meeting. So again, forgive me for being suspect here, but when the story keeps changing, I get a little uncomfortable with that. And that's really what this is all about. It's all about the noise, it's all about the bylaws, and all we can do is go with what he's telling us. But if what he's telling us doesn't seem to add up, you have to err on the side of caution. Thank you.
We done with this one? What is the pleasure of the board? Wanna vote on it? Wanna put stipulation on it?
You're gonna have to put a stipulation.
Yes. Hours of operation?
So it should be, Dan should,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, you did that hearing, but.
What about you? What do you think? What should put on it for stipulations?
Fuel by owners and so. That's his fuel, that's his.
That's the worst thing from that.
What's that?
Just so.
What's your opinion? What do you think?
concerns about the noise. Even the frequency is different than decibels. You hear a drone, you get irritating after a while. I don't think it fits within the character of Halifax in that area. It looks very industrial.
But so I just, the two questions for me on the bylaws are, and I want to be open about this. I don't want to have a conversation so everybody can hear what we're saying, because I think, I number one, I think everybody, there's a lot of different definitions on what's appropriate for the character in the neighborhood. There's a lot of different definitions on what's appropriate for the lot. I think there's a lot of different definitions on what light industrial use is. So I think whatever decision people come down on, I think is fair. Right? I think it's important to say that, because we don't say that in some of these meetings, and then people assume answers which aren't true. So I think it's really important for me to understand why someone would think it is a special permit that should be granted for that lot. I think for me, I completely understand why somebody would think that, based on the very well-written argument that, and the traffic assessment by a person who does that professionally, and a sound assessment from someone who compared that with actual decibels, is a very well thought out and evidence-based description on what is the definition of light industrial use. For me, I don't know if it is difficult. It's unusual use for a special permit in a business district like that, and I think there are some.
You want to get some clarification from town council?
Sure. I mean, yeah. I think she didn't say exactly that.
Can I address his question or concern?
Sure.
The things can be done to make things even quieter. You know, you can build a soundproof box and put it over top of the pump, and you can. That's an easy fix. You know, cut the sound down dramatically, even at the 3 feet. You know, put a cover over it with some eggshells in it.
Still have the character of Halifax in that area.
Okay, I'm only adjusting the noise, not the character.
Yeah.
It's not my job.
It really, like you gave us some other allowed business uses by special. You did a good job writing this, and you made a really thoughtful argument. And you talked about gas stations, which I asked about, which seem to be a little bit different. You talked about repair garages and auto body shops and retail commercial businesses and open air businesses that all would be other uses in the business district that would need a special permit. All of those wouldn't operate on in the time zone of the day that we're kind of talking about. A lot of these, like the garages and the auto body and the retail and the open air businesses, wouldn't necessarily create anything near a light industrial use. So these are a little bit different, and it's hard for me to especially when there's a lot of neighbors here who are pretty passionate about that.
Isn't there another business in a residential being run out of a home in the residential area a little bit further down the road? Someone's trucks are parked in another area. I mean,
We're not here to talk about that, no.
no, but it's the character of the neighborhood.
Yeah.
In that light, I'm talking about it.
Mr. Chairman, my property's been a gas station since the Depression. Long before my good neighbors owned the block. I'm not changing the character of my neighborhood. My character is already established.
For me, was on a knife's edge whether that, when I said it last meeting was whether it's industrial, light industrial use or not. I have looked into it over the past month. Again, it is there. It is considered a light industrial use in a lot of other communities. By our definition, it's right on the knife's edge. The other thing to remember is it is an essential service. People need home fuel oil. You know, I mean, that does factor into it also. We all need this too. I mean, it is an important business.
You wanna get the opinion of town council
As far as,
as far as what light industrial use is?
It wouldn't hurt. I think that would probably be the,
How would you?
we're on the fence on that right now, so I think that would be the,
Can we get town council to give us a definition of what light industrial use is?
well, whether this falls
what
on
this falls into.
this
Yeah.
falls on.
Where are you at for timing of this petition? This is the third meeting, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is the third meeting.
Mm-hmm.
So how many, do you know where we started this?
Are we within the,
Let me close it. Yeah, here, yeah. Well, yeah. Has it? Wow. Once a month for 4.5 years or 32.
go ahead.
Kevin Kane, Cranberry Drive, Madison. I don't know why you people wouldn't go down and see Mr. Greeley's place when the truck's in there offloading. It's in Halifax, it's not too far. I mean, you already did a walk study at Mr. Curran's place. I don't know what the big deal is that if you couldn't get on there when a truck's down there and hear the noise for yourself.
When is he ever expecting another truck?
I don't know.
I make myself available, that's fine.
Maybe it's a good idea to do it at 3 o'clock in the morning.
That's fine.
I'll go. Sorry.
I barely sleep as it is, so.
Then you say, oh, man.
Yeah.
And you're not talking just the truck, the engines, you're talking companies looking at that, the guy drives the hose, brass fitting on it, making all the rack.
That's why I'm asking when you're.
Rhonda?
I'll tell you, this is a
I'll be very upfront about that. I feel a little uncomfortable going to a competitor of the petitioner to find out how loud something is. So that's exactly why us people haven't really
all
considered.
I can tell you.
And we also have a very detailed, with decibel readings, sound study that was done. That was backed up by all sorts of actual evidence other than standing right next to something. And the petitioner did a pretty good job of that. The question, I think, is whether or not the actual sound, I think, is in that sound study is too noisy based on light industrial use, which is actually not described in it. But I would feel very, and especially with the tone of the town right now, remarkably uncomfortable going to a competitor of the petitioner who has been very vocal about trying to limit the acceptance of this petition to go find out how loud something is based on their reception. So that for me is why I won't do it.
Maybe you ought to go down to Cumberland.
I could, maybe I could do that. Yeah, you're right. That would make more sense.
And make sure you're there at,
Go ahead.
3 in the morning.
Mr. Greeley. Mr. Greeley.
and in the wintertime, nobody shuts their trucks.
Okay.
I think just though the comparison has to be, you have to be standing the 170, 180, whatever it was that Mr. Webber
180 feet.
mentioned, 180 feet, and then you should be inside of a building or maybe sit in your car. And you know, you can download apps. I didn't do that because I didn't trust them. I wanted to, you know, I wanted using, you know, but you can get in your car with that app in 5 minutes and you can do your own sound study. You can find out what happens to the sound, you know, 170 feet away in your car, which would resemble being one of his direct abutters in their bedroom in the wintertime.
I think you can put this to bed if you say that there's a way to mitigate the sound.
Well, they're
If you're talking
absolutely,
about putting a sound box over it or whatever you have to do, if that's gonna satisfy the sound limit, that I would advise you to look into that and come back and tell us that the sound level now is only gonna be 40 decibels.
it's easy to do because we insulate pumps. When he was mentioning biofuel earlier, biofuel has to be heated and insulated.
That would certainly end the debate on the sound. It would show again your part of trying to fit into the neighborhood.
I just wanted to mention, Jeff, for instance, on Cranberry Drive, all the talk about the sound, and from what the study sounds like to me, and what this gentleman chairman said was about the pump, but not the whole process. The sound from the truck, the sound from loading the truck, the sound from dropping the hose and everything else that goes on. He's talking about one component of the whole process. And at the beginning, when he mentioned that, he also just said the pump. He didn't mention the process of the truck. And trucks, nobody does. No one shuts their car off, and we've all spent COVID sitting in our cars in parking lots waiting for people in places. And when it's 30 degrees out, 40, 50, 60 degrees out, no one shuts their cars off. These guys and ladies who are driving these trucks are not going to shut their trucks off.
Do you have your trucks running, idling while you go in the house to get something? Your trucks are idling? Sometimes. Anybody hears his trucks from your house? Do you hear his truck idling?
Do I hear his truck from my house?
Yeah?
No, but I hear the trucks when they come down the street.
You hear the trucks coming down the street?
I hear oil trucks come down the street, yes.
Okay, we're gonna adjourn this meeting to next month. Can we get a clarification on the bylaw on light industrial use for When is our next meeting? Okay, need a motion for the next meeting. September 13th.
What time?
7 o'clock.
So, are we contacting,
We're contacting the lawyer,
so what are we?
giving us what the bylaw is about light industrial use, and they're gonna work on some noise and anybody gonna make a motion?
I'll make a motion to extend petition number 938 to 9/13 at 7 o'clock.
Anybody second?
Yes.
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 Myself, yes. So we'll see you next month at 7 o'clock on the 13th.
The story continues. The story continues. All right.
Oh, I don't know if this works. This is my first time.
We have discussion.
Everybody's involved board.
Good night.
Whoa. What happened? What happened?
This happens.
What? What happened? Yeah. God.
We have any other business, or are we gonna?
What do we have left here? We got a couple of others, correspondence. We've already done that, okay. Other business, signatures, we have to sign.
Yeah, what is in here? Yeah, okay, so, what do I saw them and I was like, I don't know what to do with this.
It's just in the box, you just have to sign, variance in that signature authority.
Oh, this is so we can sign the bills and stuff, okay.
So, Alana, what's this discussion?
I guess he didn't show up, I reminded them.
Well, they left with everybody else.
Yeah, maybe they thought we were done.
Who are you?
Oh, what, oh, I'm not on it. Okay, that's fine. Yeah, 'cause I know it. Did I miss something? Did you email us this? Sexual harassment parts? Okay, that's right. Yeah, the policy?
Yes.
Okay. I just don't want to sign it if you didn't give it. I don't know if I'm supposed to have something in my hand. Hi, Bert.
Somebody's gotta watch
You want to come up here? You can have this one. I might give it to you tomorrow. I don't know. Probably.
Then they're done.
Yeah, true. Yep.
Is that it?
No, no.
Oh, no.
Oh, no, oh, no.
This is, and then we, oh, sorry. Did you get the signature?
I give it back.
Okay. And then I think that's it in here, right? Just this.
We getting paid for this?
I don't know.
Yeah, all right.
Going here? No, I don't know where it is. Where's the, oh, she's got it.
Anybody want to make a motion?
So we have, so for the entirety of my time on the zoning board of appeals, which has not come up apparently in the last few months, is we've had, many years, 2 associate member positions, but, definitely 1 open in the last 10 years that I've been on the board. So, I think it's important that we, submit, our recommendations since, there's a lot of people who are actively interested for the first time in a long time in the zoning board of appeals to become an associate member in case we have vacancies or something like that. So,
Would you like to nominate?
I would like to nominate Bert Gainer, if he is acceptable to take.
Anybody second
Can
it?
second that?
Second it? Dan?
Thanks. But I'd have to give that some serious thought, to be honest with you.
If he's
I
willing.
did not see that coming.
Right, well, and I think we need to write a letter,
Yep.
a strongly written letter to the Board of Selectmen, that, you know, his expertise is well needed. And he's obviously an valuable asset, and he's willing, graciously enough, willing to be, I would wholeheartedly agree.
If I could add something, something to consider. I was interviewed by the selectmen and whatnot to be reappointed, and according to the state 48 rules and regulations as well as the bylaws, any approval or appointment, which is what it would be, onto the zoning board is subject to the approval of the Board of Selectmen. And they've kind of made that very clear that I'm not acceptable. Let's put it that way.
Their reason was they wanted new voices on the board, which they have that. But there's a lot to be said for experience and integrity too. And we also need that also.
Worth a shot.
And there is a vacancy that hasn't been
There's a
filled.
vacancy, and they didn't fill it.
I'm just saying they were really kind of clear about it, you know.
Well,
Mrs. DeSeza said, you know, they wanted to give other people a choice, and she was really quite clear on it, to be honest with you. She wouldn't.
well, nobody's filled out a ballot form for
Oh,
the position.
I think that's, I think it's true, actually.
Specifically your point, Bart, I'll bring up 2 things while people review the tape, I'm sure, like they always do. Number 1, you know probably better than anyone that we have had very few people fill out the talent back form in the last God knows how many years, right? And
last 30 years.
Right. The second piece was the Board of Selectmen had no public comment. They gave really no discussion on what they see as issues with the zoning board of appeals. They come to our meetings and say nothing to us about what they find as concerns about the zoning board of appeals. They didn't reappoint you because it sounds from one select board member that they were interested in new voices, which is fine. But what they absolutely did not even begin to have a discussion about the fact that we had an associate member who's sat on the board for 5 years, who has learned the bylaws of the town, gone to workshops, and done all sorts of site visits and board meetings. And they also gave absolutely no discussion to the fact that there were, I think, 5 other people who showed up for their interviews, and they didn't discuss the opportunity to give one of those people an opportunity to serve as associate board member to learn and fill vacancies, which, to be very honest, I know from watching videos of other meetings, there's a lot of absences at meetings. Ours are very few, so I don't know if that will become an issue in the future, but it hasn't been in the past. But I think it's important, especially for this board, for somebody to learn. So from my perspective, which is why I second Jerry's motion, but I also think there is finally interest in this board, and the Board of Selectmen didn't even have a discussion about the fact that in our bylaws we have an associate member position open, and it's been open for a decade or 2. And I think I personally am the most qualified person to sit on this board is you. But I also think they should step up and fill that empty position that's been empty for 2 decades and they didn't even discuss, when finally, for the first time I've ever seen, we've seen some interest, which is awesome. And I also, to that point specifically, and I think is why Jerry probably nominated some of the reason I brought it up, and we haven't had a discussion about any of this. But I think it's been the practice of the board as long as I've been around, and it's clearly been the precedent from before me, is that everyone who's ever become a member of this board has met with us first, and we talked about their interest in the board, and they've come to meetings.
That was my first time in 32 years that I've been re-interviewed.
Right, and almost always they come to us, they talk about their interest in the board, they ask us questions, we ask them questions, and then we've actually submitted our suggestions or recommendations to the Board of Selectmen, and that's how it's gone in the past. I know they're different, that's fine.
Well, they change the whole system.
Yep, it's fine, but I just think, yeah, and I also think that we should remind them that we have an open position open, and there's, for the first time I've ever seen, like, we've had meetings, before Dan came on, we had no associate members for a long time, and we had people resign, and we weren't sure if we could fill the positions, and you actually did the legwork to get people onto the board, so, I know you did. I know you did, and that's why Jerry said. So, like, it's nice. And finally, right, these 2 guys are here because of you, and I stuck around because of you. So, and the truth is, I think that finally we had 5 people show up to interview. I didn't interview, and so I'd love to give somebody the opportunity to serve the town who's showed up and interviewed. So,
and we know we're asking a lot because
it's tense, yeah.
Like you said, how it went before, but, it's on them. It's on them and it's about the town. It's not about me, you, her. It's not about anybody but the town. And clearly, without question, you are the person to be on this board. I mean, and so the selectmen will have to answer, and I would like an answer back from the selectmen, if not why.
Actually, Mr. Garrett said a lot of very nice things when he nominated. He did say some nice things.
But I think I don't know who would write the letter.
No, that's where you go, because all those in favor say aye.
That's great.
All in favor, say aye.
I just think it's a interesting scenario that there was no discussion of that. I don't know if it's even on their radar, but it's nice to see people interested. But I also know, I don't think there is anyone in the town who knows the bylaws and the process and the background, the history of what's gone into all this stuff than you do. So I would think if there was someone to fill that role, it would be you. But totally understand where you're coming from, like, and I have no idea where the selectmen are coming from, because they haven't really discussed it at all, because apparently they can't, but even if that's not a scenario, they should put one of these people who are interested in serving the town on this board, so we can make sure that we have a continuity of membership for years, because I don't know, you never know what's gonna happen, right? So I think that was the only reason I brought it up, because I was kind of surprised that it hasn't been done.
Thank you very much, I do appreciate that. Thank you, but I'd like to give that some thought. Want to go backwards, to be honest.
That's true.
Well, we do miss your expertise, Rick. You guided us all the way through this, so, and you've got the knack of making people, when they come to the board, relax. You do.
Yes.
So there was a motion and a second.
Yes.
Yes.
Ready to vote?
Okay. Passes,
Oh,
passes.
I say yes. Yes.
It passes.
Did you want me to do anything, or do you want to wait for?
You can say I'm the clerk. For now.
A motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn. Second. Yes.
Yes, everybody yes?